Catholics have dominated international headlines lately. Most recently, there's been attention paid to Pope Leo's comments about war, which many have interpreted as criticism of the Trump administration, which also brings attention to his vice president, J.D. Vance, an enthusiastic and recent convert to Catholicism. But there's more. On social media, Catholic influencers appeal to Gen Z audiences, and in different parishes, there have been reports of a surge of new converts this spring. In the United States, in France, across Africa, where the religion is growing faster than anywhere else in the world, Catholicism feels like it's very much having a moment after years of stories about its decline. So, what gives? Are we seeing some kind of Catholic revival?
I think maybe that stretches back to the Conclave or even the Conclave movie coming out. Certainly that drummed up a lot of excitement around Catholicism. And then at the same time, you have a lot of prominent US political figures who are Catholics as well. And then on top of that, we're getting all these reports. I can't open my Instagram without seeing videos of like young people flocking to a handful of parishes in Manhattan that are standing room only every Sunday evening. So definitely it's in the air. Now, to what extent we can evaluate the causes, I think is difficult to say. We've been getting a lot of like anecdata, I would call it, of, larger numbers of people seeking to enter the Catholic Church, especially this past Easter.
That's Colleen Dulle. She's Vatican Correspondent for America magazine and host of the podcast Inside the Vatican. She's also author of Struck Down, Not Destroyed, Keeping the Faith as a Vatican Reporter. She says it's too soon to say for sure whether there's a Catholic resurgence. Anecdotally, yes, but recent research also shows membership flatlining, though it uses data from a couple of years ago. Things might have changed. What's interesting, she says, is why people seem to be joining the church.
So Cardinal McElroy, the Bishop of Washington, D.C., was quoted in the New York Times saying that he sees loneliness, particularly among young men, as being a big driver of why people are joining the church, why young men are joining the church. I think there's a real hunger for community there. I think that digital influencers are definitely playing a role. I think that's definitely the case when we look at this kind of flood of videos about these churches in Manhattan, right? Because now it's a thing to post on social media as well.
If you're wondering why there's so many people walking up 6th Avenue, it's because we're all going to Mass. All going to Mass.
And certainly there's a number of influencers who cater to those young men who are feeling lonely and are pushing the message of Catholicism. So I think that that's one kind of major area. I think at the same time, COVID led to a lot of reevaluating for people of what they want their lives to be like, where they find meaning, and kind of a greater awareness of their spiritual hunger. And I think that we're seeing kind of an after effect of that, where people are kind of looking for a community, looking to deepen their spirituality. It's also simply the fact, like throughout history, that in times of war and instability, church attendance always goes up. So I think that's playing into it as well. And then I guess the final thing I would mention that I hear from particularly young people in like their 20s is people are fed up with dating apps. And so they are like, maybe I can find someone like-minded at church. And I think that plays into like these parishes that get really popular with young people, because you start to think, okay, this is a place where I can maybe meet someone.
That's the surprising thing, that it's young people, Gen Z, driving the excitement. And it's partly because of social media?
So for example, there is this one guy who goes around to different masses in New York City, different parishes, and rates them. I forget all of his rating systems, but I think definitely based on, how many young people there are, I think how the music is, and then the big one is he always rates the snacks afterwards. Yeah, so, food reviews for your church social. And then also I see this Irish guy who is going around to different parishes in New York.
Another banger of a Mass. Absolute banger.
And he says that he's been hearing from people all the time that, their parents are sending his videos to their, young relatives in New York and urging them to go back to Mass. And they're there because of him, they say. And then there's this kind of whole other part of the digital influencer sphere, which is, you're very like politically conservative, almost manosphere adjacent Catholic influencers. So that would be somebody like Taylor Marshall, for example.
10 reasons why I became Catholic and why I love being Catholic.
So that's the Catholic landscape in the United States. I want to pivot to a continent I mentioned earlier, to Africa, where the number of Catholics has skyrocketed. The Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Kenya, and Uganda all have massive Catholic populations. Collectively, the continent now represents 20% of all Catholics globally. Now, Colleen explained that while the same reasons driving Americans to church might also be the ones bringing new converts in Africa, there are also certain unique dynamics to the continent.
So there are a few big drivers of growth of Catholicism in Africa. I think the biggest one, again, to go back to the demographics thing, is simply demographic. It's that there are much higher birth rates in Africa than in other places in the world. There's a lot of population growth. And so you get children born to Catholic parents, they're then becoming Catholic and driving up the numbers. I think it's also that the Catholic Church is the most reliable provider of health and education services in a lot of African countries, in many places even more so than the government. And so the Church has this long and lasting and reliable presence there. I do want to make clear, it's not the case, as with some other denominations, that you have to agree to join the Catholic Church to receive those services. That is not the case here. And then also, since Vatican II in the 1960s, the Catholic Church has made some real efforts to enculturate itself. So there is a rite of the Catholic Mass that is called the Zaire Rite that is specifically celebrated across the African continent. And it features a lot of African dance, African songs. So there's a great sense of ownership of the church, I think, in Africa, whereas I think maybe some other denominations still feel foreign.
And of course, Pope Leo just made a big papal trip to the continent.
I think he took 16 flights because he visited 11 cities in 10 days. And so while he was visiting a Muslim majority country in Algeria, and I think that part of the trip was mostly aimed at interreligious dialogue and cooperation, in the other 3 countries he visited, so Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Angola, these are all countries where they have a Catholic population of note and where he was trying to encourage that community. And so I think that, the after effects of that may be that in those countries, the church grows even stronger.
It'll be interesting to see whether this momentum continues around the world and how the Catholic demographic might change over the next few years. So what are you hearing or seeing? Do you know any recent converts, or have you noticed this new wave of Catholicism where you're at? Let us know in the comments. That's all for now. DW News is giving you the latest and also sharing deep dives on here and across the rest of social media. I'm Melissa Chan. Until next time.